Let's go ahead and configure our project for X-ray by clicking here on Configure Project. We'll select our project, DemoBlaze Web Application, and click Configure. This is the X-ray settings page. On this page, you can see a summary, which contains a brief summary of the X-ray configurations for our project. As you can see in X-ray, the issue types are a bit different from the ones that we currently have by default on JIRA. In JIRA, we have issue types such as user story, epic, bug, task, and subtask, whereas in X-ray, we have extended issue types specifically tailored for testing, such as test, precondition, test set, test plan, and test execution. Now that we have X-ray installed on our project, we have to now configure the issue types that we want for our project. Before, when working with X-ray, all of these issue types would be activated by default. Now, QA teams have the option to select which issue type they would like to work with instead of all of them by default. Let's go ahead and move on to issue types mapping. Here, under issue types mapping, you can see that in order to configure X-ray issue types for our team managed project, you need to create issue types manually on project configuration. Let's go ahead and click here on our project configuration. But before we do that, you can see here that there are the X-ray issue types available. But as we click here on the drop-down, for example, let's say test, we have only the JIRA default issue types available. What we have to do now in order to activate our X-ray issue types is to manually create new issue types with the exact same identifier, such as test, test set, test execution in our local current project, and then select them from the drop-down once configured. Let's go ahead and do that by clicking here under Project Configuration. Under our project configuration, which you must be familiar with by now, you can see that the issue types available for our project settings are epic, bug, story, task, and our custom issue type that we created called test case execution plan. Here, we need to create new issue types that correspond directly to the X-ray issue types, such as test, test case execution, and test set. Before we do that, let's look at an example of what it should look like. As you can see here on our different project for DemoBlaze, under the project settings, I've manually created the issue types that are related directly to the X-ray plugin. The issue types that I created manually by clicking Add Issue Type here are test, test execution, test plan, and test set. These issue types are first manually created and then available to the X-ray plugin for mapping or attachment. Let's go ahead and walk through the step-by-step process of manually creating and then attaching our new issue types from JIRA to our X-ray plugin. Under the Resources section, you will find a zip file. The zip file is labeled X-ray icons. Under this icons zip file, you'll need to download the 4 icons that you see listed here for our X-ray issue configuration. Since we have to manually configure X-ray for these issue types, we'll have to create an issue type called test with this icon or logo, test execution with this icon or logo, test set with this icon or logo, and test plan with this icon or logo. Let's go ahead and do that now. In order to go back to our project configuration page for X-ray, you can go ahead under Apps, and now you'll see X-ray under your apps. Go ahead and click here, and then Configure Project, select Demo-based Web Application, and Configure. Now we're back on our Issue Types Mapping page. We'll click here on Issue Types Mapping, and then navigate back to our project configuration page. Once we're back on our project settings page for our issue types, we can see that there's an option here to add a new issue type. Once you have downloaded and extracted the X-ray icons file with the 4 images, go ahead and click Add Issue Type. The first issue type we'll be creating that's specific to X-ray is test case. Here, under the description, I will write JIRA test case. Then, under Change Icon, you can click here and change icon. Here, I have the option to upload a photo. I'll click here, go ahead and locate my X-ray icons, and then select the test icon. Once I select the test icon, I'll click Open, and then Select. Finally, I'll click Create. Now, as you can see here, the issue type has been successfully created for the test case. Just like the other issue types by default in JIRA, the test case issue type, which is specific to X-ray, has the same fields for description and context. Next, we will continue by creating our next X-ray specific issue type, which is test execution or test case execution. Here, I'll type JIRA test case execution. Again, I'll go to Change Icon, upload a photo, and here select Test Execution and click Select and Create. Now you can see on the bottom that the test execution icon or issue type has been successfully created. I'll continue by adding test set and labeling the description as JIRA test set, changing the icon, upload a photo, test set, select, and create. Finally, the last issue type for X-ray that I will create is test plan. Here, I'll label it as JIRA test plan. Change the icon, set it to the test plan icon, select, and create. Once we have successfully created all of the new issue types that are specific for the JIRA X-ray plugin configuration, we can now go back to our app and click here on X-ray. Go back to Configure Project, select Demo-based Web Application, and click Configure. Now, as you can see, the X-ray entity is not configured yet, but if we go here to Issue Types Mapping, and now under each of these dropdowns, you can see that the new issue types that were created for our project are now visible. For test, I will select test case. I won't select anything for precondition because I did opt out of creating this issue type since I do not want to set a precondition issue type for my X-ray plugin. I move on to test set and select test set, test plan, select test case execution plan, and test execution for test case execution. Now, once I'm satisfied with my selections here, I'll go ahead and save. As you can see here, The configuration was saved successfully. The change triggered a reindex. I'll move on to miscellaneous. I won't touch anything here. Move on to test coverage. And this part is important. So under test coverage, it says here that a testable coverable entity is an issue type that you can cover with tests in order to validate its acceptance criteria. And it clearly lists here that it can be a story issue type, epic issue type, or bug issue type. So what I'll do here is move available issue types, such as story to coverable issue type, epic to coverable issue type, bug to coverable issue type, and this will be the issue types that are coverable for my project. I'll click Save. Next, under defect mapping, this is very important because under our X-ray plugin, we want to be able to identify defects based on a particular issue type. The issue type for detecting bugs or errors is the bug issue type by default. We'll select it and move it to the defect issue types here, and click Save. Under test types, we don't want to change anything here. Environments, and the rest will basically keep the same. Now, if you go back to the summary of X-ray settings, you'll see that everything has changed. As you can see here, there's a notification indicating that there are 4 of 5 X-ray issue types configured for this project. Under X-ray entity, you can see test, accurately reflecting a test case, which is a JIRA test case, test set, test plan, and test execution. Here I made a mistake, so I want to go back to my test plan. So let's say I want to change something here. I made a mistake here and I selected test case execution, which is the wrong icon. What I'll do now is, in order to fix this, I'll go to issue types mapping, and under test plan, I will select my test plan and save. Now it says save issue types configuration. Do you want to continue? And I will say yes. Let me go ahead and confirm to reindex my project. Now, if we go back to summary, you can see everything is accurate. The test plan icon is accurately represented here. This is how you configure an X-ray plugin for an Agile Scrum project. Once we have installed and configured our X-ray plugin, we can start applying it towards our testing lifecycle. The way to implement X-ray in your Agile Scrum project is to first validate or verify that the issue types of X-ray are available. Now, if you click on the Create button here under the DemoBlaze application project, if you look at issue type dropdown, you'll see that the X-ray issue types are now available as options under issue types. Let's go ahead and discuss our first issue type, test case. In the Agile Scrum model, test cases are step-by-step instructions on how to verify, validate, and test a certain feature, component, or aspect of a system or application. Let's go ahead and look at one of our user stories and create an associated test case. We'll select this user story. As you can see now, under the user story default dashboard or view, there is a new option to view test coverage, which is due to default plugin for X-ray. This test coverage we'll look into later. For now, let's go ahead and create a test case for the testing aspect of this user story. In order to create a new test case, we'll go ahead and click Create here. Under the issue type, we will select Test Case, and under the summary, we will write, as a customer, I want to be able to create a new user account on the DemoBlaze website. Here, under the test case details or description, I will write, this test case will validate that a user or customer is able to create a new user account with valid username and password on the DemoBlaze website. As we go further down, under Label, we'll select DBC, and here, under Linked Issues, this is very important because there are several statuses under Linked Issues. Now, one of the most important statuses you'll see here, which is new, is tests. So this test case now tests an issue, and the issue we will select is user story. As a customer, I want to be able to create a new account using my personal details. Once this is completed, go ahead and click Create. As you can see here, you've created the new issue. Go ahead and view this issue. Now, as you can see, thanks to the X-Ray plugin, you have created a new test issue type for the user story here. As you can see here, the user story is linked to this issue as well. For the assignee, this will be the tester who is testing this test case. Story point estimate based on the story points for testing, the sprint, which is DemoBlaze Sprint Core 1, and it's an open status. Now, under the test details, you'll see a few different headers. The most important header here that is relevant to X-Ray is the test details header. Under test type, we'll select manual. The most powerful feature of X-Ray is being able to create test cases like this. And in the test case, we can manually add test steps by clicking here. Let's go ahead and add a new test step. As you can see here, a new window opens up. This is the first step of our test case. Under action, let's write something like navigate to the website at www.demoblaze.com using a web browser like Google Chrome. Now, the action is to navigate to the website demoblaze.com using a web browser like Google Chrome. The data is usually representative of data that is being input for this test step. Data such as a username information or credentials, password credentials, which we'll get to next. And the expected result is going to be that the user is able to successfully access the DemoBlaze website using the Google Chrome browser. This is our expected result. As you may recall, in our manual Excel-based test cases, we actually have this kind of format where we have an action, data, and expected result. So let's go ahead and click Create. Now, as you can see, this is the first manual step of our test case. Let's go ahead and create a few more test steps to complete our test case. By clicking here, New Step. Next, we'll add something like ensure that the username and password fields are visible under the login. The data will be empty for now, and the expected result will be the username and password fields are displayed login of the DemoBlaze website. Let's go ahead and click Create, and here we have our second test step. We can also create test steps by clicking here under Add Step and click New. So this will create our third test step. Our third test step will be provide a valid username and input this into the username field. Here under data, we'll put something like username 101. This would represent the username text we're going to input into the username field. For the expected result, we'll go ahead and say the user is able to enter the username 101 into the username field. And now this creates our third test step. Another very unique feature or function of X-ray test cases are being able to clone a test step. In order to clone a test step, we click here on Clone. Cloning a test step means that we create an exact copy of our test step like number 3, but it will be registered as test step number 4. Once we clone, as you can see here, our test step number 4 is the exact same data or test step as number 3. The feature is very useful when working with redundant data or test steps. Here we can replace username with password. And again, here, password. And instead of the data being username 101, we'll put password 101. And here, we'll replace it as password. Once this is complete, we'll go ahead and save. Now, I made a slight mistake in one of my test steps. So as you can see for number 2, we're not actually logging into the application here, right? We're actually signing up for a new user account. So here, in order to modify our text, go ahead and click into this and change it from login to sign up. Again, we will replace login here to sign up and save. We'll go ahead and create a new step. Here, it will be ensure that a success confirmation message appears at the top of the screen once a new user account has been successfully registered. Here, the data field could contain something like message success. So this would indicate the actual string or message for expected result. We'll go ahead and write something like a confirmation message that says success appears on the top of the page. The sign up button is clicked and click create. So this completes our registration process and our test case for this test. Now, in order To see this test case being reflected, we can go ahead and go back to our original user story. We can go ahead and go back to our user story. If you click here under the user story, you'll see that under linked issues, we have our test case here. If we click on test case, under test details, the test steps are all listed here one by one. This is the process of how you create a new test case in JIRA using the X-ray plugin. Next, we're going to execute our test using a test execution. Now that we've created a test case using the X-ray plugin in JIRA, we can move on to creating a test execution. A test execution is another issue type that's specific to the X-ray plugin that basically runs a test, such as this one here. In order to create a test execution for our test here, we need to go ahead and click here on Create. Under the project Demo Blaze Web Application and under Issue Type, you'll see there's a new issue type labeled Test Case Execution. Select this one. For our test case execution, we'll put a summary. The summary for this will be something like, as a customer, I want to be able to create a new account on DemoBlaze website. Under the description, we can write something like JIRA test case execution for the user story. As a customer, I want to be able to create a new account on the DemoBlaze website. Next, we will select our label, which is DBC, and then when it comes to the linked issues, we will leave it blank for now and go ahead and click Create. Now, in the bottom, you can see that there's a confirmation message that you've created a new test execution. As you can see here, this is our test execution. And now that we have a test execution created for our test case, we can add our existing test case to our test case execution. So in order to attach a test case to a test execution, we need to go here under Add Tests and click Existing Tests. As you can see here under Select Issues, it will automatically identify that there is an existing test case with the same information. So we'll click on this test case and click Add Selected. As you can see here, for the test case execution, the view changes and the dashboard looks different now. In our test case execution, you can see that there's an overall execution status with a total test number of 1, which means that there is one test case associated with our test execution. In a test execution issue type, using the JIRA X-ray plugin, you can actually add one or more test cases to one collection. So for example, here, if I create more test cases, I can go here under Add Tests and create an existing test, or I can create a new test from scratch and associate it with my test execution. In order to run my test execution, because it's currently in to-do status, I'll go ahead and click here. Once you click on the play button, you'll see that you're redirected to a completely different screen. This is the test execution view or dashboard that allows for step-by-step manual test execution as well as tracking within JIRA X-ray plugin. This is the power of the JIRA X-ray plugin when it comes to test tracking and test case execution. As you can see here under execution status, you have passed, currently being executed, and failed. You have a timer for how long it took to run the test case, and you have other information such as test description, the issue links or what user story it's linked to, and step-by-step actions. Let's go ahead, for example, run this test case. How do we run this test case? Here, we go ahead and first we need to start the test case. In order to do so, let's go back to our original test here, and then we'll change the status from to do to in progress. Once we change the status from to do to in progress, we can actually go to our test execution and start executing the test. So under test executions, if you click here, you can see this is currently in progress. Under test runs, you'll see that the test run is here. We'll click here and open our test case execution. Here, it's in to-do status. We'll put it into in progress. Once we place the test case execution in progress status, you can see that we can start running our test case execution properly. Now I have the freedom to run my test case. Let's go through this test case step by step. First, I'll click on the test case being executing, and once I click executing, I see the timer has started. And as you can see, it's executed by me. In order to work with this test execution step by step, let's go through each action, data, and expected result. Here, I'm navigating to the website with a web browser, Google Chrome. Here, I'll say that the step has passed and select the green icon indicating that it's passed. Under actual result, you can provide information such as test case step has passed, or even a screenshot. You can also attach a screenshot of what you're seeing during the test case execution as part of the evidence. Here, I'll select a file from my evidence or screenshots under pictures, such as this, something like a screenshot here. And I'll add the screenshot. Under evidence, now with the eye icon, you can see the screenshot has been attached. And I'll go ahead and save. Once I update that step, provide the screenshot, the actual result will become blue. Let's move on to the other test steps. We'll go ahead and pass this step, ensuring that the username and password fields are visible under the sign up option. We provide a valid username and input into the username field, which is passed. We provide a valid password and input into this field, which is also passed. And finally, a success confirmation message that says success appears on the top of the sign up page once the sign up button is clicked, which is also passed. Once all of these steps are passed for my test execution, the timer stops, as you can see here. The total time is logged, and the evidence is also provided here. As you can see here, there is an option called defects with a plus sign. Under defects, if you click here, you can actually create a defect, add an existing defect, or create a sub-defect. We'll go into that a little later. But basically, if a test step, such as this one, fails, the entire test execution or test case fails. And here we can log a defect by creating a defect. For now, let's pass this test step. So once this is completed, the test execution is passed, we can go back to the original test case execution. Here, go under test runs and click on our test execution. As you can see here, it has updated with the overall execution status being reflected. There has been one test case passed with the pass status. And once it has passed, let's say you want to go in and see the execution details with the evidence and other information that we just saw in a different dashboard or view. In order to do that, you would go here and click into this. Now you can see all of the execution details here. This is how you can execute a test case in JIRA using the X-ray plugin. Another very useful X-ray plugin issue type is known as a test set. A test set is an issue type that is provided by the X-ray plugin that basically provides a collection or organized collection of test cases that are related to a particular feature, component, or functionality. Let's say, for example, your application needs to test several different components, such as smoke testing every single day. When the application is first started or up and running in a new deployment or release version, we would consider very critical aspects of functionality, such as user registration or creating a new account, logging into the account successfully, being able to add a product to the shopping cart and successfully checking out the product, and several other baseline functionality that we need to check almost every single day that our application is running or being used. In that situation, we can create a test set, something like demo blaze smoke testing. Under the description, we would provide the purpose of this test set or what it's focused around. For this test set, we would want to include the description of something like demo blaze test set with a collection of test cases that are focused on the core critical functionalities of the website, such as create account, log in, add to cart, and place order. This basically means that every time we look at this test set that we want to run as part of a test execution lifecycle for a release, we would want to focus on these particular components. Under labels, we'll select BBC, and we won't link anything right now. We'll go ahead and create our test set. Now we've successfully created our test set, let's go ahead and view the issue or view the new test set. Here is our new test set. Under our test set, we currently don't have any tests. What we would like to do is add a test. Let's go ahead and add an existing test from before. The one we created earlier was this one for creating a new account. As you can see here, this is part of our test set. Now, let's say we want to add another test to our test set. We don't have one currently that is existing. So we can actually directly create a new test case and add it to this test set by clicking here on Add Tests, creating a new test. Under new test, it will be a test case. In this summary, we're going to look at the particular feature of as a user, I would like to add the product to the shopping cart to check out later. Under the description of this test case, I would write test case will validate the add to cart feature or functionality of DemoBlaze website to ensure that it is working as expected. Under the linked issues, it's already selected the tests option for me. Under issues, let's go ahead and look for add to cart, which is one of the features or user stories that I have from before. I'll select this add to cart feature. Under labels, I'll click DBC, and the reporter is me. So I'll go ahead and create this new test case. As you can see here, the test case has been added successfully, but it's currently empty. But as you can see, the new test case has successfully been added to our test set. This test set now has two core critical functionality tests. One is the test for creating a new user account, is adding a product to the shopping cart of the website to checkout. This is how you can organize a collection of tests using the test set issue type using the JIRA X-ray plugin. Now that we've learned how to create a test case, test execution record, as well as a test set, we can move on to the last issue type of the X-ray JIRA plugin for our project. In the Agile Scrum process, there's something known as a test plan. In the JIRA X-ray plugin, you also have a test plan issue type that's available to help manage a sprint cycle or a general overall test lifecycle. Let's go ahead and explore the test plan issue type now. First, we'll go to Create, and under Issue Type, we'll select Test Plan. Under Summary, think of the test plan as something like an epic for testing. For example, our summary here will be DemoBlaze core testing. Here under Description, we'll write, this test plan is for Sprint 1 release testing for DemoBlaze version 1.0 using the core test cases. Next, we'll go ahead and select DBC as our label, and we'll leave linked issues blank. Let's go ahead and create our new test plan. Here, we've successfully created our new test plan. Let's go ahead and view our test plan. Here is the default dashboard view for a new test plan in our Agile project. As you can see here, the test plan has two very important headers. The first header under our test plan is test cases, marked as tests, and the second header under our test plan is test execution. The test plan issue type is very important or critical to test coverage because it helps us track which test cases have been run for which instances, as well as how many times the test case has been executed under test executions, and also who executed these test cases. Our test plan, let's go ahead and add an existing test. Under existing tests, let's select our first test as DWA 215. Go ahead and click Add Selected. As you can see, the overall execution status is now displayed under the test plan. So the Tests tab here is showing the exact view that you would have under a test case, but it's giving you a quick view under the test plan. Now, if we go under test executions, and let's add a test execution here, let's select the test execution for DWA 216. As you can see here, it says one test execution has successfully been added to the test plan. And here you can see that the test execution related to the test case for the first user story is displayed under test executions. Here you can see very quickly and easily that the test has been run. You can see the details of the test execution by clicking here. As you can see here, it's our test results from before. Now, this is very important because what a test plan does is that it automatically links a test case and a test execution under one view. This is very critical and important for when you're doing project tracking for the software testing lifecycle. So during a sprint release, you'll have the opportunity to organize, track, and manage all test executions and test cases related to a particular feature, function, component, or release through your test plan. Now, this is especially important for the next item, which is the test repository for X-ray. When it comes to organization and test tracking and management, one of the most important features of the X-ray plugin is the test repository. Let's explore the test repository now. In order to access the test repository, you click here on the testing board. Here on the three lines, you see the testing board. Under the testing board, you see something called the test repository. Go ahead and click on the test repository. This is the test repository for our DemoBlaze web application. The test repository is a folder or a directory that hosts all of our test cases, test plans, test executions, and test sets under different folders and different files. This is a really good way to track, manage, and create different folder structures that are focused on particular areas. The test repository is a very critical feature when it comes to the testing lifecycle because it helps manage all of our test cases during a sprint cycle or a release. For example, under the test repository, you can see that I have two test cases listed here. Under the folders, I have test sets here. As you can see under test sets, I actually have a test set with two of my test cases reflecting. And here you can also create a test set directly. Let's go back to our folder structure. Here under our test repository, you can right-click and create a folder. Let's create a new folder called DemoBlaze Core. As you can see here, under DemoBlaze Core, we want to include all of the test cases that are relevant to the core functionality of our application. So we can break it down even further by creating more subfolders. Let's create a folder for our sprint release called Sprint 1. And let's create a second folder called Sprint 2. Under Sprint 1, let's go ahead and create another subdirectory or folder and label this folder as Login. And we can create another folder under the same directory and label it as Shopping Cart. Here, as you can see, I've organized two different folders. Now I'm going to go to my test repository. Here, under the root repository or the parent file, which is the main file for test repository, I have two test cases. I'll take this issue and I'll drag it into my login. The second test case is for the shopping cart. I'll take this test case and then move it to my shopping cart. As you can see here, under test repository, the root folder or parent directory, I no longer have the test cases. Instead, I have a more organized fashion for login with my test case for login and shopping cart with my test case for shopping cart. Moving forward, this is a very easy and organized way for me to locate and track all of the test cases that are related to my login functionality and any further test cases for my shopping cart functionality. Let's say in Sprint 2, I want to create another folder or subdirectory called bug fixes. And here under Sprint 2 bug fixes directory, I'll place the bugs that require fixing after they were reported in Sprint 1. This is the testing repository that's available by default using the X-Ray JIRA plugin. This becomes even more useful when we bring up the next topic, which is reporting in X-Ray. One of the most powerful features that X-Ray plugin provides for an Agile project is reporting capabilities. Reporting is a very crucial aspect of a project lifecycle because it provides traceability and coverage as well as metrics that indicate the progress of the team as well as any blockers or issues in the process. Let's go ahead and look at the reporting features of X-Ray in JIRA. In order to access the reporting feature, you go ahead and click on the three lines here. There's a section here labeled Reports. Let's go into our first report for test coverage. Here, under the Reports section, you can see that there isn't a report currently available. So what we'll have to do is generate the report by clicking here, Generate Report. As you can see here, the X-Ray plugin generated a report for our Demo Blaze project. Here we have a test coverage report indicating not run and uncovered. What this means is we have one test that is currently not run status and 7 other tests that are uncovered. Let's go to traceability, our next report. Just like the test coverage report, we're going to have to generate the report for traceability here by clicking on Generate Report. Here under traceability, you can see all of the issues that are not linked to anything or in the uncovered status or not run status. This could be an issue because when it comes to project tracking and finalizing reports, these particular issues in our project may not be covered or reported correctly. There are several other reports available here. Let's go into our tests list and generate this report. As you can see, under our test list report, we have the 2 test executions under the test list. One is passed and one is to do. Let's go to test sets and generate our report. As you can see, this is the test set we created earlier. Under test plans, we'll generate the report, and this is our test plan for the Demo Blaze core testing. Test executions list will list the one test that we executed for creating a new account on Demo Blaze. And finally, the last test case report or report is the test runs list. When we generate the report, we can see that this is the test case execution run that we passed earlier. for our Demo Blaze project. As we move on to a larger data set with more test cases and test case executions, as well as traceability and demo data in the next chapter for our live project, you will see way more information and way more coverage through these reports. This concludes Chapter 9, Test Lifecycle Management with X-Ray plugin for JIRA. I hope you learned the basic fundamentals of using the X-Ray plugin for JIRA Agile projects. Good work and great progress so far. Now, let's take a break before we dive into our last chapter of this course, Live Agile Scrum Project using JIRA, X-Ray, and more. Thank you and see you in the next chapter.